This is a piece of software that I've created that is to support the sport of ultimate frisbee. So I've called it Hobby Project to SaaS Business, and what it should be called is how I built my cutting-edge distributed microservice Kubernetes architecture, scaled it to hundreds of thousands of users, and now license it for 5 million annually. Except there are some factual omissions in there. So let's go through those. First off, it's actually a ASP.NET MVC monolith. So apologies to all you microservice fans out there. I've scaled it to tens of users, and I now license it for £5,000 a year. But it is, apart from that, a real business, a real piece of software, and this is a story of how I created it. So first, a confession. I love frisbees. I've been playing the sport of ultimate frisbee since 1998. I very quickly got involved in the media side of it. I very quickly got involved in commentating, playing, coaching. I became chairman of my local club in Nottingham. And since 2015, I've been commentating at world, UK, European level as the lead commentator for the World Flying Disc Federation, the European Ultimate Federation, UK Ultimate, and a few other, the World Beach Ultimate Federation as well. So they like the sound of my voice talking about Ultimate, and it's given me great opportunities to travel around the world. This was me at the Olympic Channel with our co-commentators in Madrid. This was in Cincinnati this summer. This is the best player in the world, Manuela Cardenas, and showing her gold medal alongside me. And my co-commentator for the World Games final, Raquel Toshnarova, and we were commentating in Madrid on a game. It was in Alabama. But from the software point of view, we have to rewind back to 2017, and this is France, the World Beach Ultimate Championships in Royan. And this is the commentator's eye view. So this is kind of where we sit. We're both mic'd up. This is Evan Lepler and Gigi Morrison. And next to them is Kate Yeski, who's our statistician. And that's the view we have. We've got replays playing on the monitor. And occasionally, if the players are in front of us and we can't see the field, we'll actually commentate from that monitor as well. Okay, that's our pitch side view. And this is another angle. So who have you got here? We've got lead commentator. They're the person that is talking through where the disc goes. You've got the colour commentator. That is the person that's kind of doing the analysis if ever the play stops and giving a little bit of extra information about the players, the background, the tournament, that sort of thing. And we've also got our statistician, Kate, over there, who's making notes of turnovers, scores, possessions, end zones, all that sort of stuff. What you do notice is lots and lots and lots of paper. Okay, rosters, who's playing on team, what number are they wearing on their back, is all on paper. Notes about previous games, all on paper. Kate is making all of her statistics on paper, and Gigi might be able to see them, but Liam can't. There's no way that can work. This was the situation we're in for the whole of the 2017 championship. The other problem I had, I was organising the team of commentators. So each night we had to decide which games are we going to cover, who's going to cover them, and when are they. And we would generally do something like this. 9 a.m, Tom and Liam are doing France versus India and the mixed. 10:10, Evan and Gigi, and I'd write all this down over a meal. It takes about an hour and a half to work everything out, and then you put it in a text and send it out to everyone. Really not very good, not very clever. That's kind of like how we do tomorrow's schedule. We'd also get sent through these huge database tables, Excel spreadsheets for every player in the tournament. And that could contain information like the shirt number, their hometown, some interesting facts about when they learned to play or which teams they've played with before. Really interesting for research, totally useless in the middle of a game. Number 8's just caught the disc. Right, let's go down the spreadsheet. It's just not going to happen. Separately, clever chap Luke Burgess-Yo had created this little thing, which was a little JavaScript only app hosted for free on GitHub. You can see it's still live there. I took these screenshots today, and it's got 2 buttons, one for turnover and one for score. And with that, you can work out a lot about the game. So you can work out whether the team has held possession and scored the point that they started the disc on. A lot like tennis. If you start on serve, you're expected to win. If you start with the disc in ultimate, you're expected to score. If you don't score, that's a break. And the game is won by breaks. So a break is the bright green, and a hold is the soft green. Being broken is the bright red. So you can see in the story of the game that team 1 started with a hold and then a break, and teams 2 started badly. They were 2-0 down, but then they got a hold and 2 breaks, and then another hold and 2 breaks, and they finished this game 6-3 up. On the back of all of those stats, he was also able to calculate all these sorts of really interesting things like conversions and turnovers, loads of really interesting statistical data that we as commentators could have. Kate was recording all of the basic stuff on her bits of paper, but we weren't able to see that. We certainly weren't able to do these calculations real time. Lesson 1, build something you care about. I really passionately cared about solving these problems. These were real problems that I wanted to fix. It is one first lesson, make sure that you really want to fix the thing. This was my passion. My other real job, I was an IT middle manager. That's me at work for Nottinghamshire County Council. As 8 to 10 members of my team, depending on the number of contractors. I'm very pleased to see Brian is here tonight. I was a former member of my team. I left, he's still there. We had a variety of different development tasks. I was thinking a lot about development standards, listening to .NET Rocks, came across Steve Smith and his clean architecture stuff. I don't know, come across Steve Smith and R. Dallas and his clean architecture. Also very much really into his weekly dev tips podcast. If you've ever checked out Steve Smith's weekly dev podcast, the first 20 episodes, you can go back and listen to them anytime, and they're really good. But I was also getting the feeling that I was doing a lot less coding. I was becoming a little bit less relevant to the rest of the team, and I was kind of needing to find a way to get back into being a coder. And so I thought, well, I want to do this project. I want to create this thing in my own time. Coming up the following year, July 2018, I was going to be commentating on the opening game. This is the opening game from that championship in Cincinnati, Ohio. And this was a very, very important thing for the project. It would not have happened if we'd not had this, because this gave me a deadline. Yeah, if you're going to be working long hours, if you're going to be focused on getting something done, having a deadline was the only thing that made it happen. It would not have happened if it didn't have that impetus. It drove an awful lot of probably quite bad, quite destructive behaviour, but it damn well got some stuff done. So the app itself, when it started, and I had a great philosophy borrowed from Steve Smith of build the simplest thing that will work. So I did. This is a monolith. It was built in ASP.NET Core 2.1. I used Steve Smith's clean architecture pattern. It was something I wanted to try. We used Bootstrap. It was plenty fast enough, and it's still not awful. It's been upgraded to .NET 6.6 now, the LTS version, and it still works great. Version control wise, I did the minimum viable version control. So a dev branch, a PR, and a main branch. Now you're thinking, you did pull requests on your own code? I was working on this on my own. Yes, definitely do pull requests on your own code. The number of times late night, 3 a.m, I'm writing code and I do a pull request and I go, what the hell? I didn't even realize I changed that bit. Get rid of that, do another pull request, and then this time accept my own code. Really important. Again, minimum viable DevOps. What's the minimum if you're doing your own piece of software? Get DevOps in. Get DevOps in the moment you've created the project. If you do, ASP new app, then create the DevOps and actually release it to a server. Because any code changes you make after that, what you want to see is them working in prod. That's what I was able to do. So this was kind of in the first week of starting writing the code. I had the dev server. I don't think I had the prod one, but that arrived pretty soon afterwards. And also, because we're Azure, we've got some minimum viable Azure, and this is still what I use to this day to run the app. So this is really low level, really cheap, bottom of the rung Azure the basic app service plan, and I only went to basic because I couldn't have my own URL without it. And it's the smallest possible, cheapest possible database you can have. I'm using Azure storage to serve the JS files, and most importantly, I'm using application insights. So, lesson 3, build the simplest thing that will work and get it into production. Okay? Your hobby project will always stay a hobby project if it stays on your laptop. The moment it's out in the real world and you can point other people at it, then you can. It'll thrive. The first thing I built was this kind of scheduling bit, the bit that we were doing on the iPhone and working out who was doing which games the following day. So I built CRUD screens to define dates, slots within the dates, divisions, fields, broadcasters, teams, people, and then a way of building it all together. And it was horrible, but it worked. And we got to this point, and I then started showing it to people and sort of saying, is this helpful? Am I building something that's actually going to make a difference to us? And it took a few of them a while to kind of get their head around what problem this was solving, because to be honest, they'd never solved this problem. They never had this problem. This was my problem. But it helps. I said, if I gave you that, would you know what to do? And they were like, yeah, okay, this is something we could work with. So lessons 4 and lessons 5. Show it to people regularly. No one cares about the technology. It's why it's so delightful talking to you lot, because you do care about the technology, but no real people care about the technology that's sitting behind your stuff. It's and thinking that they do is you're misleading yourself. Next, I got a URL. I got the logo much later, but I got a URL. I got commentarysource.com. Cost me some money, and then it cost me more money to get an SSL certificate before I learned how to use Let's Encrypt. That was really important. People stopped calling it Tom's project or Tom's system and started calling it commentary source. They started abbreviating it themselves, the CS. Well, I'll put it in CS. I'll make some notes in CS. It became part of the parlance of us using it, and that felt great as a developer to have made something that was actually part of people's workload and part of people's day-to-day life. So give your thing a name, give it a proper URL, and if you can, get a logo. My logo there was actually developed by someone. It doesn't need to be. Back at work, during the COVID pandemic, we had a couple of systems. One we didn't give a name or a logo to, the next one we did, and it made a huge difference. People grab onto that thing. That's no longer the system that you used for COVID. It was called COVIS. It was genius. So gathering data. Remember we had that those big survey spreadsheets. This was the next thing I built. Sorry, you can't see it very well on there, but we had basically a survey. You could send the survey out to people. They'd fill it all in, and then during a game, you could click on their name, and it would pop up this box. I'll show you a little a demo of that later. But it meant that we could use all of that player data in real time during the game. Now, I didn't solve the tenant issue till later, but I did solve authentication really early, because the same way as people don't care about tech, I don't care about passwords, and I really don't care to set one, restore one, or do any of that. So I used Azure AD B2C, same as Marco did in the demo. I plugged it into Microsoft and Google. Those were my two, because I figured most people have got a Hotmail address or a Gmail address. And if they've got neither of those things, hell, they can create their own email, they can create their own username and password, and that's fine as well. Having seen the Azure AD records behind the scenes, I can see a lot of people have had a go at all three of these. They've created their own username and password, then they forgot that they did that, and they went back and they used Microsoft. It doesn't matter, because they got in. All I cared about as an app was that somebody came with a valid token and an email address in it. So authentication is hard and dangerous, and other people are better at it than you. You should still look after your own authorization. So my analogy that I use at work was a policeman shows up at your door. You've got two decisions to make. One, do you trust he's a policeman? Yeah, that's the badge. That's the identity, that's the authentication. Second decision, do you let him through the door? Has he got a valid reason to be there? Has he got a role that you want him to take part in? That's authorization. They're two different processes, and you should do authorization in your app. You should trust someone else to do authentication for you. That's quite an opinionated thing. Does anyone else agree with that?
It's true. It's
That's good. Okay, good. We're all of the same opinion. That means it's not opinionated anymore. Good. We were storing lots and lots and lots of personal data through those surveys, and we were capturing it, and we were giving specific people access to it. If you're doing anything with data and you're running your own project, you need to understand GDPR. It's got a lot better. This was 2018, so GDPR was on the tip of everyone's tongue and everyone's terrified of it. I think there's a little bit more realism about that now. So we're also capturing game data. This was the screen that our statisticians were using. They could say where the disc was on the field. This is a rough approximation of a Frisbee field with an end zone at each end and positions across the field. So they click where the disc was. Each click is a pass. If that pass is incomplete, they click turnover, and it does a few things. When they press score, they have to say who threw the pass and who caught it. All of that data is captured, and that gives us this nice view, which us as commentators were using, that gives us that view that from Luke's app, and all of the data, all of the in-game data is captured with scores being green and assists being blue, and we can click any of these names and it will pop open all of that data from the survey. This was a game changer. At a big Frisbee tournament, we had something like 3,000 players. Doesn't matter how well you know your local players or the players you're familiar with, you're going to get Singapore versus Malaysia next week, and you've got to use the tools that you've got. Now, the players were brilliant. They loved this, and they really embraced it. We've also got all of those statistics that are being calculated there. Now, Brian was involved with the first version of the app, and I'll talk about some of the decisions around that in a minute. So at this point, going into the 2018 championships, we'd got the statistician using the stats app, pumping data in. We've got all the player surveys and team surveys pumping data in. We've got tournament data and player data, and it's all being pulled together. And we had pretty good tournament. Now, the back end, MVC, C#, the front end, 2018 front end mock. Those are the JavaScript frameworks popular in 2018. And the one that we picked was this one, Aurelia. This was the source I took. This is top best JavaScript frameworks 2018. Anyone recognise ones there that they probably shouldn't have used? Anyone made a bad knockout?
Yeah, not by 10 over there.
Yeah, it still works great. We chose Aurelia. Kind of had to choose Aurelia because we were using Aurelia at work, and we'd just done a lot of training there. It's a big logo. Look, 2018, it was still big. Let's have a look what's happened since. This is the top 7 JavaScript frameworks now, pulled off this year, and Aurelia nowhere to be seen. And Aurelia's support has died. Nobody's using it anymore, and it's a bit of a sad state. It was a brilliant piece of tech, but it wasn't supported. There was no uptake and that sort of thing. The source for this: 7 front-end JavaScript frameworks loved by developers, because developers no longer have the best and the worst. They love things. Now, of course, which is the right one to use there? Come on, let's have some opinions. Shout out from the back. What are you using?
Yeah.
React? No. The correct answer is Svelte. That is the technology. So, as somebody who's chosen wrongly in the past, I can be trusted to choose correctly now. If you haven't investigated it already, Svelte is freaking incredible. Its version 3 was released 3 years ago, so it's safe to get on the bus. It's still popular and it's still growing, and it's going to be the future. There we go. So technology choices matter, but they matter for not the reasons you think. They matter the size of the community matters more than the technical purity. Documentation tools and Stack Overflow is really, really important. And Aurelia didn't have those things. The technical purity was great. And, you know, Brian and I still look at it and go, this was a decent framework. Yeah, it wasn't a bad framework, but it was a bad choice. So, field testing. This is the opening game. Myself and my co-commentator, Emmy Fitzgerald, with our crazy executive producer, Tim, up in the stands for that game that we saw right at the start. And this is the point where reality smacks your app in the face. So, like, what's here? We've done a lot of testing at home. Now we've got to see what actually happens. So, the first thing that happened was you got some praise. People that were skeptical about it used it. Liam, who was the redhead chap sitting on the beach, he said, I didn't think I would use it. Someone gave him an iPad. He used it for the first 2 games, loved it, still does love it. He uses a bit of paper as well, but he was a convert to the idea. Loads and loads and loads of bugs, mostly in areas that were kind of admin areas, the areas I was using, and maybe the other commentators weren't, but the statisticians were raising bugs. Because I've got all the Devops pipelines in place, I was able to fix bugs at night. Not ideal, but it worked. Lots and lots of complexity. There are lots of things that kind of came out of the woodwork. And then the unexpected. So my system had got a game, needed 2 teams, and that relationship had to exist in the database. You would think that's obvious, isn't it? A game has 2 teams. And that worked fine for Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday when we knew all the games and all the teams that were going to be in them because they're all pool matches. What happens on Wednesday is you start getting knockout matches. You know the game is going to be on, but you don't know which teams are going to be in it before it happens. So I've got to create a schedule, but I don't know the team. Completely caught me off guard, and we had to start doing horrible things like just put the wrong teams in and then fix it near the time. That's fixed now, so you can have a quarter final with no teams in it and then put the teams in when you know. But those sorts of things really were really important. So lesson 9, eat your own dog food. Absolutely critical. This app is good because I was the biggest user and I got regular feedback from people who are using it every day and telling me where it was wrong. I heard this today, actually, drink your own champagne. Have you heard this? Well, it's like that. This app is dog food, okay? I'm not pretending it's champagne yet. Maybe it will be in the future. So we got to the end of that first championship, 2018. It had been successful. It had been, you know, good. But there was lots of things you still couldn't do. There was no concept of multiple tournaments. There was a tournament, and that was the tournament we'd just run. If you wanted to have another tournament, the UI didn't work. There's nothing there. So that needed building. And you needed a way to switch between tournaments. Tenants, all of the stuff that Marco showed us at the start, data separation, I can talk to you about that. Importing data was and still is the biggest pain in the arse. Data comes to me from every different tournament in a different format, whether it's some of them provide an API, most of them provide a spreadsheet, some of them provide one spreadsheet per division with a team on each sheet. Some of them provide one spreadsheet with all the data in, but some of it's missing and some of it's blank and some of it's in the wrong column. I hate data. We built a lot of APIs and I'll show you those. They're very interesting. And then caching was the next thing, and a key point, exception-based development, which I love, and a lot of polish. So let's go through those. Multi-tenancy, brilliant talk from Marco. Exactly the same problems I had. I needed to have multiple people. I needed to be able to tell who was accessing the system and who wasn't. And I needed to have data separation. So I use this library. It's Finn Buckle multi-tenant. It's going great. On version 6.9, I think I'm now using version 6. When I started, I was using version 2. The guy that writes it, Andrew White, is based in the States. I've had phone conversations with him when something wouldn't work. I donate to this project on GitHub as well. So this is kind of the core of the app. I use the base path strategy. So if you go to commentarysource.com/WFDF, you'll get the WFDF tenant. And I use a tenant ID per row. So it's not row level security. It's just there's an ID. Now, multi-tenant allows you to create a multi-tenant database context, which automatically does all your inserts and all your queries and all your where clauses. Thank you, Mark. It does all of that for you. So you never have to write a where clause. You never have to worry about data being inserted into the wrong tenancy. It deals with all of that, and it integrates with the HTTP context, so it knows which tenant it is that's come in. It's really cool tech. So if you are, there's loads of different ways that you can store the tenants. There's loads of different ways that you can do the data separation, and there's loads of different strategies for working out which tenant is currently accessing the page. This is the code that I use. So services add multi-tenant with the EF store and the base path strategy. So if you swap out EF store, it will get the tenants from elsewhere. If you swap out base path strategy, you could use a subdomain strategy or something like that instead. I've used iClaims transformation. What that does is it hydrates all the authorization stuff, and I'm using lazy cache as well, which I'll talk about in a minute. So this is the view that you get if you log in. So you're the policeman that's rocked up at the door, and you've got access to more than one tenant. Now, some of my commentators, they've got an account on Commentary Source, but they actually work with the WFDF. They also work with Ultiworld and UltiTV. So they get a few different tenants pop up here, and then they choose one. When they choose one, it's added onto the end of the URL, and then it starts using the tenant routing from that point on. I can talk endlessly about that tenant stuff if you want me to, but because Marco did such a great job earlier, I'm going to skip on. Data is horrible, really is. I use this tool, EPS. Has anyone used EPS for spreadsheets, Word? I pay a license for it. It basically allows you to programmatically deal with Excel. And when I'm dealing with Excel so much, this is a lifesaver. Sometimes I use manual creation of Excel insert statements or SQL insert statements using Excel. So if I've got 5 columns I need to insert, I'll create a SQL statement, one for each row, copy and paste, then replace all of the apostrophes in the O'Connor and the O'Neills and no buggers. And then some of it for the European Ultimate Federation, they actually use a system that's got a pretty good API. So I can tell it which tournament it is, and as long as I've got the right permissions, I can suck all of the data out, and that sort of becomes a 2-minute job rather than a 2-day job. I love that. It took a lot of time to write the API, but it was worth it. So one of the things which I found with this project was that because I was working in quite a tight community, and the Ultimate Broadcast community is quite tight, I was starting to sort of see various bits of interest coming in about the fact that we got all of this data in a database. And what the broadcasters wanted was they wanted to show some of this data on screen. They use a piece of software called vMix. vMix is a computer-based editing software. It powers a lot of stuff these days. And they said, if you can create a data structure that we can read, then we can take that data and we can put it on screen. And this is the sort of thing that they've been able to do. So over there, you've got at half time, you've got the number of turnovers for each team, the break chances, the completions, all the stuff that was in Luke's app. Well, it was imagined all that time ago. Now we're able to show it. We've made the game richer. All those sports geeks who love their data and their stats are now able to get the stats. Now, Ultiworld were very particular about this. They like this because it's only one statistician. Some of the leagues that they work with, they have 4 statisticians working on every game. They just can't afford that. So it's like one statistician, they can use commentary source to capture all the details for that. Similar sort of thing here. We're also able to say, after a point has been scored, who scored the goal, who threw the assist. And we're also able to pull up, this is tracking player number 22 in the shirt there, Liz Hart. She's had 4 goals in the game and no assists so far. So we're able to pull up all sorts of really interesting data that existed within commentary source. Now it's available via an API for people to integrate via vMix. This makes me so excited about. It shouldn't do, but it does. And the fact that they put the name of the software on the screen as well. So lesson 10, understand your customer. That opportunity would not have arisen without that deep embedding within that culture, within that community, and really kind of understanding what it was they needed to make their lives easier. And actually, they're the people that now pay the license fee. It's part of their workflow. The commentators don't. The host broadcasters don't. But the people with the cameras, they pay, and they pay because of the statistics they can put on screen. Now, let me tell you a story. I just finished. This is winter 2021, and I just finished doing a big rebuild of the software to bring it up to standard. So it was still ASP.NET 2.1. I needed it to be on ASP.NET 6. I wanted to go to the new version of the Finbuckle multi-tenant thing. They also wanted to add in tracking for every time there's a turnover, who threw it away or who got the block. So a whole bunch of front end and back end changes. They were coming up to this big event in December 2021. And I was really happy with how everything had gone. I'd done a lot of testing. Don't ask me about testing generally, but I've done a lot of testing for this one. And I was pleased. And it's an 8-hour time difference. They're over in San Diego for a San Diego winter. And I'm tuned in and I'm watching the first game, and the first game's going great, and all the stats are popping up. I'm like, wow, it's brilliant, it's all working, it's going great. Game 2 starts, the whole thing explodes. Like, nothing's working, no response. I'm looking at application insights. Application insights isn't even telling me that anything's happening. It's like there is no server. Restart, nothing. I moved to a more powerful app instance, nothing. I moved to a more powerful database and a more powerful app instance. I'm burning through my Azure credits like you won't believe, desperately trying to get something back up and running. Nothing works. Because of this 8-hour time difference, it's getting very late. They're still in the middle of their morning. And eventually, I just had to email them and say, look, I don't know what this is. And they said, well, is it something to do with the changes you've made? Could be. Can you roll those back? But yeah. So I rolled everything back to how it was the week before. And this was the following day. They started using it, same thing. The whole thing just would not work. Now, I'm going to show you the bug. And there's a prize. If you can spot where the bug is. So let me just show you how this works. This is, where is commentary source itself? Right, so this is commentary.
Sharing your presentation.
Oh, I'm just showing my presentation. I need to move it over here. Here we go. Right. Fortunately, tonight there is actually a live game on at the New Street Mega Bowl between two teams, the Fakers and Pretend team, and we can see what's going on over there. Here, there's a game going on. First point has been scored. Now, if we look at vMix, we can see all of the stats for this game. So here's the game stats, which is interesting enough. And here is a list of all the players in the team. Can we see that? Is that big enough? There we go. Now you're thinking, well, why is there 30 players when there's only actually 5 on the team? And this is because of vMix. So vMix, the way you create your slides that you want to show on screen, is you put slots in, and there's never 30 players on a team. So Mike, who's the guy that kind of came up with this concept, he says, just always give me 30 and I'll position them. And then if it's only the top 5 that get used, that's fine. It'll just not go all the way down to the bottom of the screen. And that's what this does. This endpoint does. And they were pulling this and then showing it at the start of the game to say, this is the roster for team A, this is the roster for team B. Okay. So, chance to win. If you can spot the bug in this code. I have an actual Frisbee to give away, and also a World Flying Disc Federation World Ultimate Club Championship. There's some comments to help you along here. It's a little bit cut off. I don't know if we can. Don't think that bit matters. That says while. And Brian knows the answer because he helped me. So we're going to get the game by the tournament slug and the field slug. If the game's null, we'll throw an error. We then get the team players from the database, and then we need to create 30 records. So we add blank records.
Right. Is that because you can't get the same question in the counting?
No.
So that's them on the third.
There we go.
Yeah.
Like there's no the rule for WFDF events is the maximum team size of 28. So this was never going to be a problem. Now, obviously, if this had been a less than 30, then that wouldn't have been a problem. That's my bug. Yeah. But it had never been triggered. This code had been in there for years, never been triggered, because no bugger has ever sent 30 players plus to a tournament because it's a 7-a-side game. You have substitutes. Why would you possibly need 28 players, let alone 30? Because it's winter, because it's just coming out of the pandemic, the college division for USA Ultimate have relaxed the rostering rules so that people who would get one chance to come to nationals can come. And some college down in the south has sent 43 players. So the first game went off fine because both teams had got less than 30 players. The second game happened, and there was a team that had got more than 30 players. And this code will just keep adding records until your server runs out of memory and dies. And the endpoint that this was running on was being called every 5 seconds. It didn't matter how many times I reran it. It didn't matter what the size of the database was. It didn't matter how powerful the server was. This was always going to eat everything it got.
It would also die before App Insights actually reports it. App Insights likes to collate records and send them together. So because that would happen pretty much as soon as vMix called it.
Yeah.
It's gone. No logs.
No. It was horrible. It was the worst. It was the worst 2 days of my SaaS business life. You've not run a SaaS app until you've dealt with a disaster. So I think this is less about software development. This is less about business. This is just about being a good human and accepting your failings and accepting reality. So there's a lot of really difficult emails that I had to write during this period. Like I say, I boosted the power of the server and I told them I'm throwing more horsepower at it. I restarted everything, nothing worked. I told them what was going on. They gave me some honest feedback. And we had a really detailed post-mortem. Now, part of that post-mortem was they said, Tom, we like the fact you're pushing against the outer edges of what's possible, even if there's some hurdles along the way. So there was a kind of reinforcing factor that this is a good customer, and actually I'm doing something no one else is doing. And they want me to keep doing it. They want me to keep pushing against the outer edges, even if something goes wrong, which is quite nice. As a result of me desperately trying to work out what the hell was going on with all of that, I started looking at anything that could be improved. And the big thing that could be improved was caching. Now, a lot of this was just pulling the data from the database and throwing it back. And next time somebody asked for it, pull it out of the database and throw it back. There was no real caching at all. I use Lazy Cache, and I'd highly recommend Lazy Cache as well. It does more than just response caching. It's got what's called locking cache. So the first request that comes in and requests the data from the database, any subsequent requests that come in will wait until that first one comes back. Now, there's other caching mechanisms. They'll all try and go and fetch the thing, and it's only once the cache has actually worked that anything will speed up. So if you've got a really high load that's coming in, your cache will never actually get filled up. Lazy Cache does all of that for you, and it does it pretty much for free. There's no difficult code to write. Here's a good sample. So I've got cache get or add async. I've got something that generates the name of the cache, and then I've got my code that just goes and gets the data from the database with a date time offset now, add seconds, cache length in seconds. Now, I'm also throwing a couple of specific exceptions there, which previously I was dealing with in a different way. The reason I throw an exception there is because Lazy Cache won't cache something that had an exception thrown. So I throw the exceptions, and then I catch the exceptions, and I do the thing that I was going to do before. Completely changed the game for this app. And it means you need a lot less Azure, sorry, Microsoft, because everything works a lot better. My little app thing that gets that created the name, I have a class called cache names. So cache names gets game statistics. You pass in the game ID, it'll just return that. Some of them are a lot more complex, but it's just a standard way of making sure that when I'm setting a key and I'm using a key elsewhere, that I'm actually setting the same thing. So I make sure that was all off elsewhere. Application Insights is your friend when it is working and is actually reporting stuff. And I used exception-based development. So by exception-based development, what I meant was I kept a very close eye on the failure log. If you ever use Application Insights, from the moment I put the system up, I watched the failure log. Anything that went wrong, I fixed it. And I did that. We did that at work as well. In the first week of an app going live, we kept a very, very close eye on that failure log. And anything, no matter how minor, CSS file 404, fix it. Even though it's not important, doesn't change anyone's experience, go fix it. Because what you really want to know is when something genuine is going wrong, that it shows up there like a big red flag because it's the only exception. The other thing I did was look at performance. And I'm looking at how long it's taking to come back. Anything that's over 100 milliseconds, that's got the cache added to it. And so most of these things are now getting, sub 15 millisecond response times, which means you need a lot less Azure because everything's coming back a lot quicker. So adventure complete, and this is a quick wrap up. I was back in Madrid this summer. This is the stats from commentary source being used in some fabulous World Games graphics. Myself and Hannah are sitting in Madrid commentating on an 8-hour time difference game from the Olympic channel. We commentate off a monitor, so we're watching exactly what you're watching. But we had the statistics on our laptops. You can see we've both got our laptops there that have got commentary source running. The statisticians in Alabama, we're in Madrid, and we're using commentary source to communicate between each other. There we go. Some labels I've added as well. I also went back to Cincinnati. I always say I'm the world's second best ultimate Frisbee commentator, but I get to work with the best. That's Evan Lepler. He's a proper sports commentator. He works on ESPN and all the major sports broadcasters, but I'm still the second best. Anyone watch YouTube? MKBHD? Yep. MKBHD says commentary source is good. I've got a little photo with Marquez. He's a player for New York County. I got to interview him and also got a little selfie with him there. And this is the photograph which I think means the most to me. So this is inside the broadcast booth for the World Club Championship finals. And you can see the complexity. This is vMix that the guys are using here. They're using all sorts of different triggers, replays going on. And over here is commentary source. It's a key part of their it's a key part of the way they do their broadcast now. It's a standard part of the industry, and that feels great to have taken something that was a passion project and an idea and grown it to the point where these guys pay a license fee, the WFDF pay a license fee, and the European Ultimate Federation also pay a license fee. I can answer as many questions as you like, and however many questions you've got time for. Okay, that's me.
One question. What next for the application? Then you've done well. First of all, great presentation. I think it's amazing.
Thank you.
What next for the application? Now that you've gone this far, is there a plan afterwards? Is it? Are you going to? You can do so much with it. You've got so much data, etc. And you've got a platform there.
Yeah. So the big pain points are still getting data into the system. That's the one thing that means I can't really step away from it. So this year I'll be writing a new data import for USA Ultimate, because they have a website where they put all of their players and all of their games. I just need to build a scraper for that, basically. The front end web app is written in Aurelia. It can't be written in Aurelia anymore because it's just old NPM packages and it's bad. So I'm working with a Dutch university who've got a web development course, and they want to redevelop the front end in Svelte, which is convenient. That's what I would have done anyway. So they're going to use it as a student project. And I probably put up some prize money for that because I'd like to get people invested and interested in it. So hopefully I'll get the front end of it rebuilt in a different tech. As part of that, one of the things we don't do very much at the moment is analyze the actual movement of the disk. So that position of where is the disk, there's an awful lot you can tell about the game from that data, but it requires a bit more intelligence and analysis than I've ever done. So from a game point of view, if the team have managed to get to within 15 meters of the end zone, they really want to be scoring from there, but sometimes they get pushed back or they turn over in that space. That is key. It's called red zone offense. So how in a rugby match, the team get within the side of the try line, but they don't get over because the defense is so good. You can tell a lot from that. And we've got all of that data, but we don't analyze it, we don't interpret it, we don't put it on screen, we don't give it to the commentators. That's another area.
Will you be applying in sort of like, you've got the data that you're capturing from your things like that. Will you be doing sort of data science with it? Like, when you're commentating, I'm assuming people sitting at home are commentating and tweeting and whatever they're doing this day. Could you not pull that data in, and as a commentator, you do sentiment analysis and what people are thinking, and even after post match kind of thing?
You definitely can. YouTube comments is where civility goes to die. So Twitter is definitely it is totally dead. I have read the YouTube comments on a number of my videos, and I don't really want to. Certainly don't want to run any sentence analysis on it. The most useful thing we get from YouTube comments is mispronunciations or corrections. So we'll quite often say, number 43 isn't on our roster. They all know who he is, and the YouTube comments will come back and say, that's Nazim. And so we're like, okay, write that in or update commentary source for that sort of thing. But yeah, other sports is maybe the other thing, but I need to think about that and market it properly. And a lot of other sports are already tied up with a big data provider, and they've got all of their stuff sorted out. So there's a few sports which don't have that fully.
You see Amazon and all over the F1 and elsewhere.
I'm not competing with that.
No. You know, serious money changing hands there.
Oh, yeah.
That's what the B1 is.
I probably haven't upgraded my B1 instance. Yeah. Tens of users, John. Where else?
Any kind of tech out there for like tracking Frisbee movement, or is it all kind of manual?
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. So I've seen there's a couple of these devices that you hoist up on a big pole and it sits looking at your football field, and then it's doing leg movement tracking and really detailed positional tracking for certain sports. Obviously, there's a market for that for football, rugby. There isn't a market for ultimate because it's such a minority sport. But the tech is kind of out there, and I wonder if anyone wants to do a sort of a data capture analysis project. We have thought about putting wristbands with a sensor, putting some sort of sensor on the disc, so we could automatically track who'd got
Just painted disc, do image recognition.
could do that, but to see which player has got the disc and have that data captured. In the States, there's an American league that have got four statisticians. They have two for each team, and they mandate that everybody captures their data using the same software. It's not my software, so they get yardages for every pass, and every player gets, so they get much richer data. The cost associated with capturing that data is the restricted thing for me. So that's kind of my sweet spot at the moment. But yeah.
The old storage bags, we like get an Xbox Connect and it was with the USB attachment, and
So one of the
it had the two, it could do like it had the two cameras, so it could actually do like 3D kind of image.
there's an American company called Jinx Cam, and what he does is he's built this setup which is supposed to be anybody can broadcast a game. You put the camera up on a pole, and he built it so you use an Xbox controller to move the camera around and watch it, and there's super easy to broadcast. So there's that sort of thing going on, but yeah.
You gave an example of when you commenting on statistics provided from another country. So there's a statistician in another country, and
Yeah.
he was commentating on the stats that was given.
Yes.
I was curious, how did you do the real-time updates and how did you make it?
Let me. I didn't demo that. It's all been chat, but let me demo that. So if we got this, yeah, we've got that. So we go to fake nationals. So if I do this in a new window and put that at the bottom of the screen, zoom out a bit, and I put that. Whoa, is this all going on the wrong screen?
No, just
Oh, there it is.
to it.
Yeah, and this one we'll go to commentate and put that at the top of the screen. Okay, so they're both connected to the same game. Fakers are on defense, pretend team are on offense, and they've got the disc. There's been a turnover, and we've got to say who's made the mistake. So it was turned over by Louise Lynch, and we confirm that. And then there's been a score. The assist was by John Smith. The score was by Doris Defense. She's very good. And we confirm that, and then it pops up in here straight away, and we can see what's happened. The one turnover, and Louise Lynch has got this bad mark. You did something wrong. Doris Defense, where's the point gone? This is where I find it's not that my demo doesn't work very well. There's another score, and this time Louise Lynch has done something good. Sharon Swing has scored it.
And thing just popped up.
Oh, did it? There we go. And so that's how it works. It's don't. So it's not Signal. I wish it was. The back end is creating a big JSON object that represents the entire game. When it's got at the end of each point, it pushes that entire object, not a diff, the entire object to the server, and the server takes it and puts it into a big text column on the end. This is not ideal, is it? Puts it into a big text column at the end of the game. Yeah. It also updates a stats last updated field, which is a date. The front end pings the stats last updated thing every 2 seconds.
Yeah.
And every time it finds a difference, then it pulls that out of the database and updates the screen. Like I said, it's the simplest thing that would work.
Yeah.
But it's not as sophisticated as I'd like it to be, and you know, maybe there's a chance to change that.
So one of the challenges is the Excel.
Yes.
Yes. So how did you do that at the moment? And what would you do it differently?
How would I do it differently?
No, yeah, how did you do it? No.
So the Excel thing works fine if the Excel sheets are always the same. The problem is that they don't come through the same. I've done 5 tournaments for WFDF this year. Every single one had differences in the data import. So I couldn't reuse the data import routine. Mac user, if anyone's ever thinking about using a Mac for Microsoft-based development, it's great. This is the M1, but you do need this thing over here. It's Rider. Sorry, Rider fans. Oh, come on. Doing. Oh, that's the idea. Right. Let me just quickly show you the other one. I had 2 lots of Rider. Here we go. So I have an import thing. So this. See that? So you imagine that there's a workbook. Each sheet has got a separate team on it, and within each sheet, within each team, there's 5 or 6 columns. So I get my memory stream from the upload, the file that they've chosen. I open that up as an Excel package. And I say for each team sheet in the workbook, you'll then loop through it. And then I've got a separate service, which I call, basically, extract the team. And that will extract the team and all the players and save them to the database. And then go through that process again. So it extracts the team and then it does the same. It runs through each player within the loop, updating the row. And eventually it finds an empty row and then it stops. So it's not mad, crazy stuff, and you wouldn't be able to do that without the EP Plus piece of software. But that's how I do that. Not mega.
The thing is that I deal with a lot of Excel spreadsheets, so it wasn't very how spreadsheets everywhere. Then would you think about using logic out and also the mapping as well?
Like I say, if it was standardized, yes, there's a number of different better ways we could do it standardized. The issue is that it comes through in a different
I believe the solution is to just not use Excel from a
Yeah, that would be even better.
It would rather have teams have an application that they're able to update themselves.
That's me. I'm good. Thank you very much, everyone.